Everyone. It's 1:30. Welcome to the Town of Highland Beach Town Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 7th, and it's 1:30 in the afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Present.
Commissioner Peters,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Present.
Mayor Moore,
Present.
Town Manager Labadie,
Present.
and Town Attorney Tresivia.
Present.
If we could all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Nope.
Seeing no changes? May we
No
have a-
changes. I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We do have a proclamation today for Veterans Day. So this proclamation commemorating Veterans Day, which is November 11th, 2023, is a federal holiday that's meant to honor all veterans of the uniformed services who served or are still serving during times of peace as well as war. Veterans Day had its origins at the end of World War I, when the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, the fighting ended with the signing of an armistice. And whereas on November 11th, 1919, President Woodrow Wilson formally declared the day an Armistice Day in order to reflect on and honor the sacrifices made by service members during World War I. Whereas the name was changed to Veterans Day by an act of Congress on May 24th, 1954, in October of that year, President Eisenhower called on all citizens to observe the day by remembering the sacrifices of all those who fought so gallantly and through rededication to the task of promoting and enduring peace. The president referred to the change of name to Veterans Day in honor of the servicemen of all America's wars. And whereas we recognize all active duty veterans serving around the world today. Now, I therefore, Natasha Moore, Mayor of the Town of Highland Beach, on behalf of the Town Commission, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2023 as Veterans Day. I guess there's no one really to accept this, but is this a resolution? No, just a proclamation. Okay, so we don't need a motion or anything. So we honor all those and are grateful to all those who have served. Moving on to public comments. Any public comments before we get started? You could state your name and where you live. My name is Barbara Nitzler.
Thank you. Dear Commissioners, I am here to express my appreciation for the Commission's handling of the Milan Park issue. I'm particularly impressed with how thoroughly the Commission has considered all aspects of the planned park and its implications. As a nature conservation fanatic and daily beach walker and beach cleaner, I observe the unique ecosystem and biodiversity of the very remarkable every day. It is a truly very, very special place of nature in Palm Beach County. And there are not many like it. The rocks, the reef, the fish, the marine mammals, and the birds, and many more, all enjoy and depend on the tranquility of this niche in an overbuilt coastal environment. We cannot make good what was broken in the 70s and 80s, but we can preserve the little bit that's left. I am wondering if the Commission has consulted with organizations that specialize and can advise on this kind of niche ecosystem and habitat. But not only regarding the endangered species and rare habitats, but also for all the other birds, fish, and so forth. Palm Beach County cannot look away from this. Sources to consider, and I'm sure you all know them, are Florida Department of Environmental Protection, US and Florida Fish and Wildlife, especially for this particular issue, the Florida Ecological Service, Ocean Conservancy, Wildlife Florida, just to name a few. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. We'll definitely take that under advisement. And we are in the process of hiring a specialist to help us with the Milani Park issue, but also keep in mind, there is a meeting February 1st, which is an outreach meeting by the Palm Beach County, and it will be hosted here at 6 p.m. February 1st. Please mark your calendars. And it's a great opportunity for residents to voice their opinions. So I invite you back to restate your concerns as well, but we will also share that as well. Any other public comment?
Good afternoon. As most of you know, I'm the permit holder for the Sea Turtle Program here in Highland Beach. And to follow Barbara's comments, I just wanted to bring to your attention the Milani Park project and my concerns about it.
And if you could state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Joanne Ryan. And we have a very high density of turtle nests right in that area. We're broken down into zones. Zone 1 starts at the Boca Highlands Club and goes to the Bellito access. And just in that area, we had 648 turtle crawls this year. And in the Palm Beach growth area where the project is proposed, we had 47 turtles crawl out of the water and 20 of them nested just in that little piece of property. So my concern, of course, is, public access, the changing of the ecosystem out there. And we all know that the wildlife has fewer and fewer places to go to do what they need to do. So I just wanted to mention that to you guys.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Moving on to announcements, board vacancies. We have the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. We have 2 vacancies for 3-year terms. We have 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending September 21st, 2024. And on the Code Enforcement Board, 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending September 21st, 2024. Upcoming meetings and events, November 9th at 9:30 in the morning, we have a Planning Board regular meeting. November 10th, Town Hall is closed in observance of Veterans Day. November 14th at 1 p.m., Code Enforcement Board regular meeting, and November 21st at 1:30, another Town Commission meeting. Board action report. We have a Planning Board recommendation on the proposed amendment concepts pertaining to the accessory marine facility and seawall regulations of the town code.
Okay, good afternoon. Ingrid Allen, Town Planner. Oh,
Sidekick,
yeah.
Eric Goldenberg, Chairman of the Planning.
I was going to formally introduce you, but that's okay. Yes, definitely. So on page 8 of your packets, you have a memorandum that is basically focusing on the recommendations that the Planning Board has made to the Commission regarding the amendment concepts, which pertain to the accessory marine facility and seawall regulations that are currently in the code. And our chair, or the chair of the Planning Board, there he is, as I said, well, he introduced himself, Eric Goldenberg, is here to provide you what the recommendations are. And starting on page 8 of your packets, I provided a table which lists the initial amendment concepts, and then the next column over are the recommendations that were provided by the Planning Board. Just very quickly, for those that may be watching on TV, I just wanted to give a little quick summary. I will say that I do give a more lengthy history of all the planning, or I should say not planning, but all the public hearings or meetings that have been held on this topic, as well as related matters, starting on page 9. It's a quite lengthy list, but brief as well. So on February 7th of this year, the Town Commission, you had a discussion item which pertained to the public input meetings that we had in December. If you all recall, we had 3 public input meetings on this topic, right, on the amendment concepts. And at that February 7th meeting, you all looked at the public input that we received, and as well as you discussed next steps. So the consensus from the commission at that meeting was to have the planning board review the proposed amendment concepts and then eventually provide you with recommendations on each one. Now, the commission made it very clear at that meeting that you wanted the planning board to take their time. You didn't want them to rush. So that being said, starting in March of this year, through October of this year, the planning board has discussed the amendment concepts at each of their planning board meetings. So I want to make that very clear. And I guess I'll just go ahead and give the floor to Mr. Goldenberg. As I said, he'll go over the recommendations and we'll both be able to address any questions. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Eric Goldenberg, Planning Board Chairman, Resident Regency Highland, 3912 South Ocean. I understand there's been a little bit of impatience to find out exactly what needs to be looked at and how it's going to be handled. And before I forget, I would like to acknowledge one of our planning board members are here, Jason Chudnovsky. Thank you for supporting me and watching my back. I appreciate that. We took into consideration all the recommendations that came before we started looking at all this. And we tried to formulate some ideas and some concepts that we could supply to you for your consideration that would not hinder the residents and the community, but also help and protect the community. And we think that's what we have been trying to do. And that's why it's been taking a reasonable amount of time. Our board members consist of current voters, myself, a past voter, and some condo and residents that had all different kinds of input as to what we wanted to present to you. I think the first one is the maximum height for, if you would look, it's on, I believe, page 8, maximum height for AMFs or accessory marine facilities plus 8 feet. The issue we've been having, as we all know, is the rising seas. And these last king high tides, when we were out on a boat, we noticed that called the skegs, the bottom of the boat motor was in the water. And what that does is it corrodes or helps to corrode the back end of the boat and the motors. So we felt that we needed to raise that height to keep the boats, not all the time, but when there's king high tides, giving them the ability to raise their boats a little bit higher. Right now, I believe it was at 7 feet or no, we don't have a maximum, but so we decided that we wanted to make a maximum. The other issue was, as we all know, if we're looking at the water, the personal watercrafts. We looked into that, but unfortunately, they are out of our purview and they're controlled as you can see. There is no requirements and there shall be no requirements for personal watercraft. Maximum seawall cap height is increased. Could you help me with that, Ingrid, please?
That is the maximum seawall cap width. The initial amendment concept was for the cap width to be 3 feet with a maximum seawall cap plus dock width at 8 feet. And the board's recommendation was to do a maximum seawall cap plus dock width at 8 feet. They decided not to call out the seawall width, just the maximum seawall plus dock at 8 feet.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. And the controversy that's coming up now is going to be encroachment into the water. And that is 25 feet or 25% of the waterway. Now, when we went out on the boat, thank you, Chief. When we went out on the boat, that the patrol boat, I'm sorry, we found that some of the canals are very narrow and some are fairly wide. And we also have some lakes that we have to deal with. So the issue comes that if we don't put some sort of regulation in, someone could extend their dock plus the boat all the way into the water, and it would be a hazard to navigation and or for someone to bring their barge in to repair their docks. So far, I'm okay?
Yes.
All right. All right. Now, the setbacks. There's been a bunch of controversy about setbacks, but let me see if I can explain that in a fairly simple way. In land setbacks, we're concerned that if this is the property line, that we do not want neighbors to be interfered with someone else's air conditioner, pool, whatever. But in marine facilities, we were looking at setbacks for docks as well as accessory marine facilities. And in our travels through Highland Beach on the water, it was pointed out basically by Ingrid, which we really did appreciate. She has some great input, is that a lot of the condos and some of the smaller 3 or 4-plex communities, they have their docks the full length of the property. So it's a misnomer to think of them as setbacks because the dock runs the whole length of the facility. Now, what we decided, we thought is a reasonable alternative is to take and say that there's a minimum, not a maximum, but a minimum of 10 feet for accessory marine facilities on that dock space. So that our figure, don't mind if I move your, I guess I do mind that. If the lift has a minimum of 10 feet, if you put a boat on that lift or any piece of equipment that you want, it will not interfere with the neighbor's property. And part of that is the quality of life we want for this community. So that's the difference between a setback in the marine sector or in the land sector. Do we have any questions on that at that point? Yes.
Yeah, does that take into account the fact that boats extend both behind and in front of a lift? So that could.
Yes, they
impede-
can't, no, it won't impinge because they're not allowed to impinge on anybody else's property. So that was part of the discussion. But if you have a 50-foot boat, and first of all, probably will not be on a lift. But if you have a 35-foot boat and you only have 10 feet, that would be like 10 in the front, 5 in the back. But if you extend over the other person's property, then it's between the two property owners to negotiate how they feel that they want to work that out. And we know that there are some areas in this community where the neighbors have impugned on someone else's property, but they have worked it out. And go ahead.
I know that when we first were discussing this, the idea was that because we have narrow canals, because some people are directly on the intracoastal, that this was not a one-size-fits-all proposition. And I also know that the people from Bird Beach, which for those who don't know is the north end
Yeah,
of town
we found that
on
out
the
ourselves. Yes.
intracoastal, they appear to be very happy having 25-foot setbacks.
I agree.
And because,
And the good doctor has told us that many times.
yes, and they tend to have larger properties. There's no issue with them intruding into a waterway because the waterway is so wide at that point that it's not a problem. So I think maybe we should codify that they should be 25 feet setbacks up there because the properties are large enough to deal with that.
But the issue is that they're on the intracoastal. The intracoastal, really, we do not control. The state and the feds control that. So that there's different regulations for the intracoastal. And our concern was if there is a mention of 25 feet somewhere in the code, then everybody's going to want that 25 feet. And I understand one size doesn't fit all, but if we do have a minimum of 10 feet, they're more than welcome to move back to 25 feet. That was our thought.
I'm not sure that we can't specifically zone for different areas because we're not talking
Well,
about.
please don't mention zoning it.
We're not talking about intruding into the intracoastal. We're talking about
Lengthwise.
length
Yeah.
against their face stock. And the idea, as I understood it, was that they kind of like this, in essence, a 50-foot buffer between boats.
I do
That
understand
The
that, but
boats tend to be larger. They tend to stay in the water all the time because you're right. You're not putting a 50-foot boat
Right.
up on a lift.
they
That's
actually have,
ridiculous.
yeah, well, whatever. They actually have protection from the wakes in the intercoastal.
Yeah, but they also, it's noisy when somebody starts up their engine. So
Well, we're not, but Commissioner, we are not saying that it has to be 10 feet. We're saying no greater basically than 10 feet closer. So they have the ability to put it 50 feet or 30 feet.
you're absolutely right, but that means that the guy next door could put it 10 feet and then you've got a battle between owners.
In all due respect, you're always going to have battle between owners. That's the first thing. That's a given. But
I get that, but if we can reduce.
well, that is
The
really up
battle.
to you, and that's your discussion. Our discussion and our recommendation is we felt that it would be reasonable for 10 feet. And some of the properties besides Bird Beach are smaller. So there's an issue.
Absolute, some of them can't afford a 10-foot setback.
Right. They
because
don't have the room.
there goes their whole piece of property. They wouldn't be able to put a boat in there at all. You know,
Okay.
you have a 50-foot piece of property, you can't take 20 off of it or 20.
So
So
again,
that creates other
I
issues.
understand where you're coming from, and the good doctors made that very plain and clear to everybody on the planning board, as well as everybody else.
Yes.
All right.
And just to clarify, the
Yes.
AMFs currently are 25-foot setback. Is that right? So the dock and the AMF are 25 on your setback?
Okay, currently in the code, the only properties that require the 25-foot side setback, I'm talking about a marine setback, are those properties that are zoned single family. So that's Belito and then the northern part of the town. Right, the Bird Beach area. Now, the code also says if you are between, I think it's 50 and 70 feet, if your lot width is that, then you can, instead of 25 feet side setback for the marine facility, it would be 15. That's what the current code says. There's no side setback for those properties that are zoned multifamily currently.
But for the single family,
Yes.
it's 25 for both the the marine facility and for the dock, correct?
A dock is a marine facility according to the code. So marine facilities are docks, boat lifts,
Okay.
pilings, yeah.
Okay, so then that means that there would be nothing for 25 feet from the end of your dock.
The structure. Now, if you're talking about a boat lift, it's the structure. Right, you can have the boat overhang so long, right, when it's on the lift, it's gonna overhang.
Right.
Has to be within the
But there
property
wouldn't be
line.
a piece of dock in
Right,
that 25
correct,
feet.
the structure. I just also want to make clear, because you talked about possible, I thought you mentioned the mooring of the boat. Right now, and we talked about this in the public input meeting, anyone can moor a boat right now. The setbacks that are currently in the code for marine setbacks, they don't apply to mooring the boat, right? It's only if you have it on a lift or if you have a dock.
Mhm.
That's when the marine setbacks kick in. Anyone can moor a huge boat, so long as it's within their property line, they can do so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we need to make clear that the property line is not necessarily where your seawall is. That there are not many, but
Right.
there are a few pieces of property that are on the intercoastal that their property line is actually a distance.
That's more in the condominiums, right? Most
Well,
of the
not
single,
in just the condominiums, but some of the private homes, if I remember correctly, that their property line actually extends.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, I think mostly we're,
And just a quick question. The original recommendation from Greg Babby was a 10-foot setback on each side. We currently have 25 feet. So where did the no setback? When did that enter the conversation? When I look at
Are you talking about the dock or you're talking about marine facility?
the dock. So what I'm reading I'm reading what the planning board's recommendation is. So I'm talking docks.
Yeah, I understand.
Docks for single families, have a setback of 25 feet.
Currently,
So currently, and the proposal for you to consider was 10 feet setback. So
I thought for the docks, there was no setback.
no, the original proposal.
Maybe the
The
original,
original from Greg Babby
Yes.
was townwide 10
10 feet, right.
setback. So just, I don't know if you can give a little bit of background on how you guys went from
25 to 10.
10
to 9.
0. Yeah.
Okay. And again, I'll go back to my little display here and say that if this is your property,
Mhm.
you have the right to have a dock the full length of your property. If our proposals are
That's what you're
accepted,
proposing, right?
okay? 25 is very restrictive. And on condo associations and multifamily, what you're forcing them to do is to shorten their property by a great deal. So we're not talking about a lift now. We're just talking about the dock. And docks really don't interfere with anybody's visuals. So we're proposing that they have the right to have the dock the full length of their property. Ingrid pointed out to us that there are some condo associations, and what is that last canal down there where the homes all share the one common dock? And we felt that it was reasonable to have them have the dock their whole length of their property. But then and they're basically moored, they're not lifted up. But if somebody in their association gets approval from their board to lift their boat, they cannot come into somebody else's property with the back end of the boat. But at least they have the ability to protect their vessel if they want to lift it up. Again, we did not want to hamstring anybody's right to enjoy their lifestyle, but at the same time, we don't want to interfere with anybody else's right to enjoy their lifestyle. So it's a real balancing act that we tried to approach. And again, now we have another issue is how far, when we go back to something that you need to be aware of, and I think Ms. David brought it up, there are some properties that extend their property line into the water. I mean, it was surprising to find out, but if the property ends here, the physical property ends here, and we use that as the wet wall, is that how we did wet face? The wet face of the property, which is a seawall, ends here. Their property line is out here. So that if we didn't use the term wet face, they would then say, oh no, we can extend our property all the way out to their existing water line property, and then it would hamper other people. So that's why you will see the term wet face. And one of the last things we did, which was interesting, and I think probably the most controversial because it's going to force people to do certain things, is that this is a water-based boating community on the whole. And in our travels, we noticed that very few, or reasonable few, do not have ladders into the water. And we've been very lucky so far that nobody has disappeared. Because if you fall into the water, there is no way to get out. So we have, a lot of grandchildren here, a lot of more mature people here now. And our concern, it wasn't that funny. And we feel that there is a need to have ladders, and we were to be able to accommodate people to get out of the water. If God forbid they fall in. So we discussed 25 feet, 50 feet, and we ended up that a reasonable distance would be 100 feet. And we felt that if somebody falls in, they should be able, if they're near the water, be able to maybe doggy paddle or float the 25 or 50 feet to get there. And it would not be, it would not be too onerous on an owner who has a dock or a property to make their property safer for their family and maybe a neighbor's family. The other thing that we did notice when you see the verbiage is that a number of the existing ladders, because of the differences in tides now, are about a foot, 2 feet out of the water. And we're asking that either they be extended into the water at ultra low tide or have an adjustable that you can yank it and pull down. And I think that was it. The maximum seawall height. Yeah, we talked about that. We almost forgot about that last time. Go ahead.
Okay, so the maximum seawall height, this was an amendment concept that came later. It wasn't necessarily part of Mr. Bobby's proposed amendment concepts, but obviously an important topic. If you remember, we had, as part of the planning board meetings, we actually had the marine expert come in. The board had requested that marine expert come in to talk about this specifically, the seawall height. And so the marine expert was on board with having it at base flood elevation plus 1 foot, right?
Can you explain what base
Yeah.
flood elevation?
Sure. The base flood elevation, we did discuss this at the public input meetings. The base flood elevation is established by FEMA. And let me give you a specific definition so I read it correctly verbatim. So the base flood elevation is the anticipated height of floodwaters during a 100-year flood. There's a 1% chance of getting flooded each year. So obviously the higher if your property is above base flood elevation, obviously you have a lower risk of flooding. You'll get a better flood, insurance rate. Actually, we have a diagram, Linelda, if I could pull up the diagram that was provided at the public input meetings, but that's just a general gist of the base flood elevation. So the board did get support from the marine expert that this was a good formula for a maximum seawall height. Right now in the code, the code reads that seawalls have to be at base flood elevation or higher. So I think the concern is that somebody could come in with a really high wall and say, well, I'm consistent with the code, I am higher. So that's why this discussion came into place, to prevent something really high to come in. So again, that sweet spot, again, based on the marine expert, was to do the base flood elevation plus 1.
And our concern was that it would be that someone coming in with new construction or reconstruction would make a moat around their property, and then the next door neighbor would be flooded. Exactly. And actually what would happen is it would flood and then come back in the back end of their property. So that's where that came into.
Are there any that exceed this right now?
I don't know if they exceeded. I know there's some new construction that has some extremely high seawalls.
So you're talking specifically of seawall height?
Yes.
Okay, the town, we don't go out and assess what the current situation, but I could tell you from being with the town now almost 4 years, I've processed several requests for seawalls. I would say all of them are at base flood elevation.
Okay.
We've had a few maybe at 6.5 feet. Again, on the west side of A1A, the current base flood elevation, according to the FEMA maps, is 6 feet. It is pending 7 feet right now. So pretty much everyone's coming in right at 6. As I said, some of the newer homes on Bolito, I believe maybe it was 4206 or 4205. Intercoastal Tranquility, I always forget those. I think it was Intercoastal, right?
Yeah.
I believe one of those was a 6.5, but that's the highest I've seen in 4 years being here with the town.
So this rule would not have stopped any of the ones that you've seen in the last 4
No.
years. None of
No,
them
and
had.
everything we're talking about now, what you consider will be grandfathered or grandmothered
Right, I know.
or
but I was
grand person
curious.
in.
Anyone who had submitted a plan in the
Ye-
last 4 years,
yes.
no one would have had to have their plans changed because
Right.
of the maximum.
But
seawall.
even across the Boca side, today, when there's large boats coming by and it's king tide, their seawalls, the top of their seawalls are wet. So we're really concerned, with global warming and so forth and so on. Our board is trying to look at it more practically. Raise it as high as we can without endangering neighbors. And when there's new construction, eventually everybody's going to have new construction, then hopefully it'll be uniform at that point.
Are there any that are lower than base flood elevation
I
at
would-
this point?
I would think there are.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I
There's
would
plenty.
imagine because they were built at different times.
That's
And
correct.
until they have to have any, and some have no seawalls,
Yeah.
but so one of the things we were looking to do is have everyone on the intercoastal particularly, it's not quite the same issue on the ocean side, but everyone on the intercoastal to raise their properties up so that they don't flood and their neighbors don't flood. And flooding creates major issues all the way around. And obviously we can't require people to take out useful seawalls. You can't tell them to put a seawall in. But we would like to, you're right, going forward, we'd like to protect the properties on the intercoastal as much as we can.
Yeah, I know that I've been on the Marine Patrol vessel with several of the commissioners, and of course, the planning board's been out there twice. And those of you that did come out with me, you'll see, if you recall, you could see the different seawall heights, properties that are adjoining or adjacent to each other. Some of them were at 3 feet or 4 feet, and then the new home is at 6 feet, right? It was, obviously very obvious. I know there's been some discussion from, some municipalities that they're considering mandating it to maintain the integrity of the barrier island. Obviously, our code is not that. Right now, we have a lot of seawalls that are at 3 feet, at 4 feet, and that's fine. But again, if you want to come in and install, and that's the key word, install a new seawall, then you have to comply with the code. Yeah.
Well, I believe in Fort Lauderdale, they do have a mandatory height. However, they're dealing with a lot of side streets, if you were, that we don't have. We're strictly on the intercoastal, so it isn't quite the same. But yeah, some of the people on the smaller streets, you've got a neighbor here and you've got a neighbor there, and then you've got a flooding situation.
Yeah, I know that Delray Beach has certain seawall height requirements depending on the zoning, right? So if you're in this particular area, it's, 5 feet or, whatever it may be. It does vary, but they have a lot going on in Delray Beach, so.
Yeah, but, and even there, I don't know that they are able to tell people with a useful life left in their seawalls that they've got to change it at that point. Normally, that type of thing is when you do any kind of construction around it, then you've got to change it. Much like with an electrical code, if you don't do anything with your electrical system, you're okay. But if you change anything, you've got to go in and change all of it.
Wow. Okay.
So the bottom line here is that these are recommendations. We've thought long and hard about it, and I don't expect you to make that decision today. I think you should look at what you have now that we've tried to explain it a bit, and you can always come back to the planning board and get further explanation on what you feel you need to do. But I would maturate it and in sometime in the near future, then make some decisions, even if you want another public input meeting. Now that you are about to codify some things, like ladders need to be put into the code. as well as we need to put the docks into the code also, Ingrid?
Yeah, if I can just add to
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So just keep in mind, these are amendment concepts. This is a concept level.
Right.
So obviously, depending on the direction we get today from the commission, obviously we'd have to have an ordinance and put this in a format to
Sure.
be codified. And so, yeah, we're still at the concept level. So we obviously like to get some direction from the
So I
commission.
do have a question about the fourth concept, encroachment into the water. So the proposed concept says 25 feet or 25%, whichever's less.
From the wet base?
Of the wet site.
Right. But that's not in the whichever's less is not in the. board
Yeah, I did see
recommendation.
the comment come through from a resident. I think that in all the discussions that the board had, there was never an issue with whichever is less. That was never an issue. I think what happened here is I listened to the board meeting. I heard the meeting again. I wanted to be sure to capture verbatim everything, and unfortunately that was left out. It was unintentional, but I think that was the intent of the board at all times, that it's whichever
It
is
is
less.
whichever is
There
less,
was
okay.
never any discussion in the months of the board talking about it that they wanted to remove whichever is less. That's just a given.
Okay.
So it's just not included in the chart here in the table, but that was not an intention, it was an error, of course.
And then is there a reason with the maximal seawall cap width of 3 feet? But the proposal is just the cap plus the dock is 8 feet. Like what was the rationale for dropping the 3 feet for the seawall cap?
No, I don't recall, but I think the tenor of our conversations was that we do not want everything extended out into the waterway. And I think that if we keep it consistent, you won't have one property sticking out 2 feet, one property sticking out 1 foot. And then we wanted to make sure that we'd get some consistency without being unduly harmful to anybody. I think that's what we talked about.
Yeah, but also in previous discussions here, I believe the idea was to stop people from extending their property by having a larger
Yeah,
cap.
we did have that issue where people could extend their property out and then backfill in. And now from a 100-foot lot, they now have 120 foot, and then they build the dock out further, and then all of a sudden they're into the waterway, but it's their property. They got 25 feet, so that was the concern.
Yeah, yeah, typically what we see when people come in for seawall requests or dock requests, the standard dimension is a 3-foot seawall and a 5-foot dock. That's typically what you see. Now, are there some variations? Yeah, there's some variations. Another thing that we typically see is people who have existing seawalls that are deteriorating. They may be at 3 feet or 4 feet. So they have to get approval from the state agencies, whether it's FDP and or Army Corps. And Army Corps and FDP typically allow what we see what is very common is that they allow them to put the new seawall. They'll keep the existing seawall. They add a new seawall. It's usually within 18 inches. Now, we just recently had a sort of a rare one, given the way the property was developed. They were allowed or did get permission from FDP and Army Corps to do a seawall 4 feet from the existing wall. Now, that's a lot of nuance there. Apparently, the home was built on the seawall, which is interesting. Yeah.
Too close to the
Yeah.
proposal, so they could not get a crane in without ripping
Wow.
part of the house off.
Right.
So we, again, all these proposals, and if they are adopted, if anybody has any issues, they can always apply for a variance or come in front of the planning board to say, I have a special exemption, I have a problem. But at least what we're trying to do is to put some consistency in this without being too ambiguous and not interfering with anybody's quality of life if we can help it. Again, there was, I think it was last week with John Oliver, that we're talking about quote unquote planning boards and regulations. It was John Stewart, actually. I guess I'm saying
Good
something
person.
about myself, but it was, all the planning boards and all the regulations and blah, 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 and all of a sudden, nothing gets done. And it makes it too much on the homeowner to try to get anything done, to get anything approved and trying to improve their property and creating a better tax base for us. And that's why we've attempted to do what we can. So now it's in your court to either come back to us with some additional questions or to have public have additional input or to approve.
Thank you. Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
report. I really appreciate it. Is this where we talk about next steps, or should we make it an agenda item for a future meeting to discuss?
You could talk about it now. It's not an agenda item, but you could give us directions to bring something back to you. To move forward. Like Ingrid said, this is a concept. We have to formalize that into a written structure, which would be the ordinance. Then you could take a look at it, direct it back to the planning board because it would be in some of the zoning regulations. So there's still months of work ahead of us to get it and go through our due process, if you will.
I guess my question, Dawn and Judy and even David, have you guys been on the boat
I
to?
haven't either.
Oh, you haven't either?
No.
Oh, my goodness.
No, I have gone out with Ingrid, yeah.
Oh,
No.
you have. Okay. Oh,
So I
fun.
think we need the opportunity to go out and actually see what this looks like, because looking at a map that gives me feet doesn't mean anything till I actually go and see how wide that really is. Otherwise,
Commissioner,
it's just
I
conceptual.
totally agree with you. If you go out again and you'd like me to attend, I'd be most happy to do that so I can explain to you what we saw and the rationale behind what we did.
Yeah.
If we are allowed to do that, I don't know what.
I'm not sure, but we could. go
Yeah,
out with Ingrid.
you never know.
Yeah, I thought she-
So that's why I tried to do a little show and tell here to at least explain the setback situation.
And actually, when I saw that you recommended 8 feet as opposed to 7, and you explained it, it made absolutely perfect sense.
Yeah.
We want higher, not lower.
Can we please tell my wife that I make perfect sense?
But it had to be explained
one-
first.
I'll take it, I'll take it.
My only comment is, as this was happening, Jason Shadnovsky, as this was happening, we were trying not to service just the desires of individuals. We were totally looking at this as a community effort. And that's where you can sometimes get caught. Because if you look at this as an individual, this is what I would like, it can put you on a very, very bad path. So I would look at this truly as a community effort. And I think that's what was being said by our chairman.
And I do understand that it is a monumental task if you want to replace a seawall by pulling out the existing seawall, that creates major issues. So they do set it in front. They create a new seawall, but they extend the cap so that it's in front of the old one. Because if you pull these things out, your whole property can collapse at times.
And there are people that would go pretty far out into the
Well, that's it.
coastal.
No, that's
It-
another
There
problem,
has
yeah.
to be a happy medium there
Correct.
so that they can go beyond, but not, create another 10 feet onto their property, right?
Thank you.
So I guess I would recommend that the commissioners who have not gone on the boat to, perhaps schedule a time. And I guess I would also recommend that we have it as an agenda item to discuss it as a commission, what our next steps would be. So what
Yeah,
do you guys think?
I agree, but also I'd like to know, can we make one rule for multifamily and one rule for single family?
Yes, you could. It gets tricky when you get into doing it in that fashion. So yes, you could. But again, you're writing an ordinance for every district could get tricky. And then it wouldn't be consistent and potentially could have the appearance of being discriminatory to one person on a body of water versus another based on property or zoning type versus actual frontage, and having the ability for riparian rights use here. So it gets a little tricky.
So we could do that, but have definitions within it or exceptions within it, where if the property isn't wide enough to have certain things, or if the canal they're on isn't wide enough to allow it.
Correct. As I hear the two gentlemen from the planning board, yes, that was the concern, is you can't write it for every random situation because
No,
every
right.
canal is different. Every
Got it.
curvilinear turn on a water body changes. So it gets complicated to start doing it based on if this, then not this, then this, then not that. That test could be difficult. The only one that I saw that did a halfway decent job of it from Ingrid's work is Gulfstream, where they went out and did everybody's property. They basically did a survey of everybody's single property and said, parcel A, you can do this. Parcel C, you can do.
We're
That's
not doing that.
that's a little bit time consuming
Yes,
and
not
expensive,
doing
but it's
that.
clear.
But- Yeah, but Commissioner, excuse me, but Commissioner, remember, if there needs to be an exception to the rule, everybody wants to have the exception to the rule anyway. But if there's exception to the rule and they can show quote unquote a hardship or a problem, they come back to the planning board. And I think there's only been one instance since I've been on the planning board where we were hard and fast and forced somebody to change what they did. Yes.
If there is a variance request, actually it goes to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals.
Right.
It doesn't come to the planning board. So it would be another board. It would go to them and then they get the variance approved. Then they would go to the planning board for
Right.
the installation of a seawall or a accessory facility.
Yeah, so the bottom line is there are protections to protect the community, protect the homeowner. And that's why we made this kind of presentation and recommendation for your consideration. So that's it, folks.
Thank you. I have a request.
Yes,
Ingrid, do you have the maps that were part of the supporting documents today? If you could put it up, unless we do it next meeting. Do we have
Yes.
Time for that?
Lynell?
Mm.
if you need me, I'm sure.
Yes, it appears that there is such a variance. As you say,
You're talking about
such-
these maps? The-
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And there was one other thing. Let's be a little, we are voting on an ordinance coming up to the planning board about zoning coming up shortly, which is going to be the next major task that we in the planning board and you on the commission are going to have to tackle. Now, I'm not running for office, but you folks will be running for office. So as I spoke with Commissioner Peters about, it gets to be a little touchy. So when we start talking about, for one zone versus another zone, that is likely, possibly, maybe going to change in the near future. So that's something else that you're going to have to consider.
Because we do have zones.
I
mean, we
know, but
have
there are all-
Family zones, we have multifamily zones that are low density and multifamily that are high
Exactly.
density. And so there are definite differences in
As-
different parts.
As
of town.
Ingrid tells us all the time, you can do A, you can do B, or you could do nothing.
Oh,
and-
nothing is not an option.
Well, again, with all these different zones, it could be an option because it could get really messy. But we're working on that next.
So Ingrid,
Oh, just if I could, Mr. Goldenberg, you're talking about the no action option, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I want to bring that up too. If you will recall from the public input meetings, each amendment concept was placed on the PowerPoint and I gave a no action option, right?
Right.
I will say there is a lot of nuance out there and it is staff that's going to be implementing this code if it gets approved by the commission. I had indicated that right now we have in our code a regulation that we can bring in a marine expert. So I mentioned at the public input meetings, I'll mention it again. If I had a seawall that came in tomorrow that was really high or if I had a boat lift that came in tomorrow that was really high, I would bring in the marine expert and have them determine whether, with regards to the seawall, if there's any impact. Is that any criteria in the code for seawalls? But that's not to say that the expert would not be able to determine that there is some impact with a really high seawall. With regards to accessory marine facilities, docks and boat lifts, we have actual criteria. If you're installing a boat lift and you're installing a dock, you have to not impact the navigability of the waterway, and you can't have a visual impact to the adjacent property owners. So then we would have the marine expert to make that determination. And again, in the last 4 years I've been here, we brought in the marine expert 3 times. They gave a report. The report was provided to the planning board, and the planning board made their approval or denial. One of them was denied. So that's also the no action option. That's what we would do now. So
How much
just something for you to
support,
be mindful of.
how much support through all this have you had for the no action item?
Well, in the packets that you have, the version that's online, which has all the supporting data, I included all the public comment. There's several pages of public comment. I don't recall anyone specifically. No, actually, maybe I
Yeah,
think maybe there was 1 or 2. I think that were from the public input meeting. Yeah. Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think some people were like, leave it the way, it's fine the way it is. I think there may have been maybe again 1, 2, 3.
I think there definitely
Yeah.
are some mixed support for or against. It's not I don't think that there's a consensus on each of these items. That's just what I am observing. And if we were to do what happens with the marine expert with respect to these recommendations? Do we retain that marine expert in the?
I would recommend that you retain it, because you can always have some, we don't have the crystal ball. We don't know what somebody's going to submit to the town and want to get an approval on.
So what would
So-
happen? So let's say, we have this maximum height of, base elevation plus 8 feet. That would be in the ordinance. And then let's say we retain the marine expert and the marine expert says that's too high. So what would happen when the marine expert comes up with something?
Well,
that's
if you move forward with the language that it's the maximum height of an accessory marine facility is base elevation or 8, then you're saying that's it. And if you comply, you comply.
And there's no marine expert.
No. If that's what the code reads.
Right.
But if someone's coming in that wants to go higher than that, then I
So
would
for the
recommend to keep the
variance.
regulation.
Okay, so more
Yeah.
for the variance.
So for the variance, right, so when
the-
it goes to the court, Board of Adjustment and Appeals, they'll be able to say, well, what does a marine expert say about this? We don't have anyone on staff that really can.
But it
make
could
that
never
determination.
be less if there was an argument for, the docks shouldn't go property line to property line. If it's in, if it's in the ordinance that says no setback for docks, but then a marine expert says, I don't know, that's such a good
Well,
idea.
That's the code.
that's the
That's the
code.
way the code reads.
Right,
And
right.
so
So
that.
there's
you're-
no way of a marine expert making it more restrictive. The only thing that they could do is make it less restrictive.
Right, so as I said, right now, we have a lot of flexibility, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we have certain, with regards to docks, how far you can encroach into the waterway. And I've mentioned this several times. Our code says if your waterways are regulated by Army Corps, which all of our waterways are regulated by Army Corps, whether you're in the lake, whether you're a canal, or you're on the intercoastal waterway. And I mentioned in March of 2020, we actually met with Army Corps and they confirmed that they do regulate, because that's the way our code reads. That, if they regulate it, then you can encroach into the waterway as far as you want, so long as Army Corps approves it. Our hands, we can't make any determination. If Army Corps approves it, they want to go 7 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet. If they get that Army Corps approval right now, that's all we have in our code.
But doesn't
Yeah.
our code also say that, from what I was just hearing, that you aren't supposed to hinder somebody's view? Because we had a situation in my community where the gentleman wanted to get, I think he wanted to put a 45-foot boat up on a lift. And It just so happens I looked down on that. And while they apparently got approval from Army Corps, as a prior boater, I can tell you, if he put that boat there, no one would be able to get around him. It
Well,
would
that- yeah.
absolutely not, and not only would it be smacking the person right across from him in the face, that's all they would see would be boat. But for the homes that were closer inland, I would say, just that they would have a tough time getting around that boat if they wanted to have boats of their own, and they have private docks by their houses. They just wouldn't be able to get by.
And I'll be happy to touch on that. I actually inherited that project when I first started here at the town 4 years ago. Yes, the Touche property. There were a lot of issues with the plans that were submitted to the town on that. First of all, previous plans that were submitted, I
Yes.
believe it was 2017. They got approval from the planning board. Unfortunately, the plans that were submitted to the planning board,
Would change.
first of all, were not scaled. And they had the pilings at 4 feet. When they actually built it, they were at 12 feet.
Yeah.
So
I was
there
gonna
was a
say,
stop work
it was
order.
like, whoa.
Right, there was a stop work order. Now, you're right, Army Corps has their regulations, but then we have our town code, right? We have regulations, criteria in the code for accessory marine facilities, which includes boat lifts. Right, you can't impact the visual of your neighbor. So what happened? They submitted a new application for the 12-foot pilings. I read the code, I was new here, and I saw, wow, there's a provision for a marine expert. I'm not a marine expert. Our current building official is not, although he knows a lot about structures. We brought in the marine expert. We gave the report of the marine expert to the planning board, and the marine expert on the 12-feet pilings, since there were 10 of them, they did question, why do they have to be so high? That was a question. The board denied it. The applicant came back and requested to be at 7 feet. Now, we got another marine expert. We had the same marine expert now review those plans. They said it was reasonable. The planning board denied it, and then there was some litigation. Yes, there was some litigation.
And he wound up selling the property
Right.
after all of that.
Right. I think and also what I've mentioned to the planning board in the past, I think we've come a long way since how plans were submitted to the town in 2017. We make sure the plans are scaled. We have the applicant call out the piling height. If the applicant knows the boat that's going to go on the boat lift, we have them superimpose the boat and put the height of the superstructure of the boat. We have a definition of boat lift that references the superstructure of the boat. So I think staff is a bit more on top of things, with all due respect to the staff in 2017. And we've not had that issue. We've not had that issue in 4 years.
And
So-
there is a distinction between having a boat on a boat lift and just having a large boat on the dock,
Right,
not lifting it up.
right.
If you live on a marina and there is a boat on the dock in a private dock, and you don't want to look at boats, don't live on a marina. That's not lifting it out of the water. It's just
Right,
being there.
right, moored
And
at the dock.
yeah.
Right.
and completely different situation.
Yes.
But I'll say two things and then you won't see me around for a while. One is that, it determines the height of a boat by the length and the width of a boat.
Sure.
Because if you
Boat.
get if you're concerned about that, the taller the boat, the wider it has to be and the longer it has to be. So there is a limiting factor to that. And the last thing is that without Ingrid Allen's support and help and her staff, we would all be in deep problems because she is on top of it all. And to be concerned about what happened in the past, we have to learn from the past, but we got to be aware that we have a new sheriff in town who's been helpful to the residents as well as to all of us. And I want to thank Ingrid for all the hard work she's been doing and her staff. Thank you.
When
We
did I
agree
hire
with
staff
you,
for
by
you?
the way.
I said, when did we hire staff for you?
So I guess I'd just like to reiterate, if the two commissioners who haven't been out on the boat, if they could go, and then if we could have this as, after they've had the opportunity to go, that if we could bring it back as an agenda item, and then any discussion on that, everybody
I
okay?
think that's
Yes,
good.
I think,
And then we'll
Yeah.
discuss next steps at that agenda item. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, if I am allowed, quote unquote, legally, I think I'd be able to point out. Okay. Okay. Oh, I can go up here. Okay. Again, I lied. Now it's my third thing I'm saying, but if I am legally allowed to go, I can again point out some of the things that we were concerned with. And I think it's important, as Jason has mentioned, unless you go out on the boat and see what's going on, it's like, you know, in your mind's eye, you just can't get it. All right, I'm out of here.
Thank you, Eric.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a big project.
It is a very big project.
We're all very sensitive as far as what happens to our property at the water line. So yeah, we very much appreciate you tackling this and providing your recommendations. So thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Ordinances. Ordinance number 2023-003, and this has to do with the acquisition of goods. This is the second reading for this ordinance. So I'd like to open it up, since it is a second reading, I'd like to open it up for public comments. Do we have any public comments on this item? Okay, hearing no public item comments. Does anyone need a presentation on this? I think we've heard about this.
No, we've heard it prior, but it's self-explanatory. Thank you.
Okay, if we're ready, go ahead.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2023-003.
Seconded.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Next item, ordinance number 2023-004. This is again a second reading for this ordinance, and this has to do with the referendum question, which is to raise the funding limitation of $350,000, which was established in 1992, 32 years ago, and to adjust it to be $900,000, which is to account for the 32 years of inflation, and to adjust it annually on June 1st, beginning in 2025, according to the Regional Consumer Price Index. Any discussion on this?
No, I think we've been through this.
Yeah, we have. I'd like to open it up for public comments. Seeing no public comments.
I think the language is clear. Thank you for the rewrites.
And I think we've discussed this to death.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if we have, can I have a motion?
Yes, I move that we accept ordinance number 2023-004.
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner David,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next item is another ordinance, which is again a second reading. Ordinance number 2023-005. And this has to do with the canvassing board and giving the town commission the discretion to designate by resolution the Palm Beach County Canvassing Board to serve as Highland Beach's canvassing board during the uniform municipal elections. Any discussion before I ask for public?
I think the fact that this gives discretion to handle it one way or another gives a lot of flexibility. So if it's ever determined that it shouldn't be in the hands of the county, that's fine. And actually, this provides that every year there must be a referendum to let the county deal with it. I think that's a lot of protection so that we're not losing control of things.
Did you mean a resolution or referendum?
No, it's a,
You said referendum. You mean, were you
Yeah,
referring
for-
to
yeah,
every
I think you
year
did, yeah.
after?
Yep,
yes,
resolution.
yes. You know, it's by referendum
Sure,
every year thereafter.
Sure.
Yes, this is the referendum.
This is a
Yes.
referendum and it's a resolution that we will have before every uniform municipal election, because it's not every single election, because
Right.
some of the times they're different. So just in the event of a uniform municipal election, we will have a resolution in advance to determine whether or not we want to designate the Palm Beach County Canvassing Board. I'd like to open it up for public comments. Any public comments? Hearing none, close the public hearing. So if we could have a motion, please.
I move that we accept ordinance number 2023-005.
Seconded.
Roll call.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, another second reading for ordinance number 2023-006. And this has to do with updating the building code for the 7th edition of the Florida Building Code. We've also heard about this quite a bit. I want to open it up for public comments. Any public comments about this? Seeing no public comments, any additional discussion amongst the commission?
No.
This is something that we have to do every time the state updates the building code. We have to update ours to conform to the state's updating. So it's really a pro forma type of ordinance.
Agreed. Motion?
I move that we accept ordinance number 2023-006.
Seconded.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have one item under the consent agenda, which is the October 17th Town Commission meeting minutes. Any changes or anything with respect to the consent agenda? Okay, so if we can have a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda for the minutes for the October 17th, 2023 commission meeting.
Second. I second.
All in favor? Say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Item A, fire rescue implementation update. Oh, okay.
Mayor, Commissioners, Vice Mayor. Quick update for you on the fire station development. Last time we talked about the captains. We're doing the pre-employment physicals. They're just about done. We are beginning phase 2 of the backgrounds and the firefighter drivers. Those should be done next week. Firefighters, we had the interviews. We ended up picking 13 candidates. We needed 15, so we're gonna reopen it last week, and we've gotten 38 additional applicants since last week. So we'll be closing that up pretty soon and going to those people to get the 15 best candidates for the job. So construction, you see, we have windows, we have doors. Framing on the first floor is done. Framing on the second floor will be done today. Then there's inspections because we're gonna do all the wiring and the HVAC and all that stuff, and then those will be inspected. We're waterproofing all the exterior entrances. The exterior walls being prepped today for stucco, so by the next meeting, you should see a good part of the building already stuccoed. And this week we'll be doing the outermost membrane on the roof. We've already put the base membrane down, the insulation. They've put the pitch in the roof so it could drain the water out. And then there's 3 levels of top post membrane that they're putting it on starting this week. So we'll get that moving along. Fire rescue, the rescue is done and ready. But because the checks were gonna be ready today, we decided to go up next week so we could pay for it and deliver it after the inspection. So myself and Chief McCarthy are gonna go up next week. We're gonna do a complete inspection, make sure everything's done the way we want it done. We've already seen the pictures, they look really good. And then we'll be able to drive it back. We're arranging, actually, it's already been arranged to have the aerial delivered in the next week and a half to that site. So they can put the decals and the rest of the markings on the fire truck. Once you get that done before January's time frame to bring it down here, so We're still expecting a quote from Pride to get that done. They haven't given it to us yet, but we're going to deliver the unit. They've given us permission to deliver the unit onto their site. I called the vendor today and she'll have it, let me know when the truck's on the way. I'll meet the truck up there, do an inspection, to make sure there was no additional damage from the storage and whatever, so we could accept it. We've been receiving a lot of equipment, extractors on site. The extrication equipment is on order. So you've seen some large purchases, including next time for the next commission meeting, there's an agenda item for the compressors for the breathing air compressors. That's above 50,000. So we'll bring it to you for approval. And we're buying additional equipment as we speak, getting ready to buy uniforms and other smaller items moving forward. So right now, I think we're on track, actually maybe a little bit ahead of schedule. The delays in supply chain, that hasn't really affected us because we kind of bought things that were going to be longer earlier. We bought the SCBAs we delivered in mid-January, but we bought them back in September because it was a 6-month format supply lead time, so they'll be delivered on time, January, February timeframe. In plenty of time for us to have the firefighters on board by March 1st. So if you have questions, I'm here.
I think all this is wonderful,
So do I.
but don't say we're ahead of schedule because then we won't be.
We'll have the full head at the beginning of this. Chewing through
But
it and getting
I
that.
think you're doing a great job. I think this is all coming along. It's very exciting to drive by and see that building going up.
Well, we have a great team and the town leadership has been very, very helpful. So it's not me alone. I'm just the one taking the credit, but for the most part, we have a
Well,
huge
no,
team of
but
people behind us.
things work from the top down. And if the top isn't good, then the bottom is not going to be good.
So thank you, Marshall.
And I think it's great, all the applicants that you've, sounds like you're not having any issues hiring.
No, we have not had any issues. We found some good applicants. The process we used in May became a little bit convoluted ahead of so we've actually changed the process to apply, which made it a lot easier for the applicants. So I think that's going to be positive moving forward. The other company we use, they were good. They had a good reputation, but during the execution, they had a few missteps that kind of put us behind. So I think we should be fine because we started early, so we have the time to catch up on any mistakes and missteps and correct them. So we don't affect the operation.
In your experience, how much turnover is there in a fire department on an annual basis, for example?
That's a good question. Depending on the personnel, how happy they are. It's difficult to keep firefighters happy or whatever. But everybody that comes here so far, and myself included, are ecstatic to be here. I mean, the leadership is great. We have good elected officials leading the charge, and the upper leadership in the town is really good. So we're actually using that to market to other people that want to come in and do their time. So although we are going to have turnover, because the younger the people are, they get more excited about, doing great things, and until they get there and they say, I really kind of where I was. And that happens more often than you think, even in Boca Raton, Palm Beach County, people make moves. So we will have some turnover. I don't think it's going to be as high as we think it's going to be, but I would say that there will be some turnover. Turnovers are expensive, so we want to minimize, because we're training you. We're spending a lot of money to train a firefighter
Sure.
the day to walk in the door. And so the more turnover you have, the more cost you associate with your personnel, which is your highest cost to begin with.
Mhm.
So we're trying to create a framework to create an environment that people want to come and make a home.
And stay.
So to the much chagrin of Marshall, I mean, it's a lot of because we have to put some language in there to keep them happy. But in the long and short of it is that we're trying to make a home for people to come in and stay. Will we have turnover? Yes. We try to minimize that by creating a positive working environment.
Now, I assumed that there would be some turnover for a host of reasons, but as long as you now have a standard operating procedure in place for interviewing and hiring,
Correct.
it should go smoother.
The thing is, the market for firefighter paramedics, believe it or not, is extremely tight these days in Palm Beach County, in the whole state. At the conference in February, Fire Rescue East, smaller departments, 1 station, 2 station departments are lamenting the fact that they can't keep employees. And so that's why we put so much time and effort, myself and the fire department staff, into creating an environment, especially in the policies, procedures, benefits and all that stuff, to make sure that the people want to come here. And I think it's the word is getting around, because had this thing for 2 weeks and I already have to shut it down because I only need 2 additional firefighters and I have 38 applicants. So how do you go through 38 applicants to get 2 people? So, yeah, the word is getting out that, you know, this is a good place to work. Like you guys like to say, 3 miles of paradise. And so that's making the word is getting out, and people are starting to take notice of the fact that this is not a temporary thing. This is not the commission trying to do something for a while to negotiate with Delray. It's actually an initiative that has gotten legs. It's going to fly. It's going to do a good job.
Chief, your applicants are from other departments mainly, or again, any newbies?
We have some newbies. We have a lot of newbies.
Yeah.
Probably 50% of the new applicants are right out of school and wanting to do things. Another 25% are people that are retired early, you know, 40s, 50s, that want to come in and get some work. But we need some of those people because we don't want all new people starting up a fire department. And some people are looking to move from other departments. In fact, we had a couple that I really want to get, and I couldn't talk them into it. But with the latest changes in the environment, they're nibbling at the bait. So we'll get some good people.
I have a question with regard to the old firehouse. Now, I know all the, you know, the attention, the efforts is to the new firehouse and what you're doing. So
it should be in the new firehouse, but go ahead.
What, do we have a plan? I should be watching this question now as to, I mean, I know we discussed briefly, some choices we have with the rear, the back. But perhaps you could refresh the commission and the public viewing as to what is the use of the front of the firehouse now that exists, what's contemplated.
Sure.
And secondly, what, if anything, do we have planned now as to the facade? We're going to have this beautiful new structure, and then we have the current house. So how is that going to go?
Both good questions. Was we've been talking about the primary use of the old station. First and foremost is we still need to use the bays to house our backup or our reserve equipment. So the extra ladder truck, the extra reserve response unit has to go in there, ambulance basically, and the ladder truck have to go in there. After that, we've had those discussions as to how do we convert that old outdated space into something that reflects the newer Highland Beach. That meaning, how do we create that space as an indoor-outdoor use space for community events? So at our last commission meeting, I'd indicated we went over some of the draft concepts that were there. I've directed P-Gal, Sam, and Joby, the architects, to start giving me a little bit more detail so we can begin to not only share with the commission, but to share with the community. And again, what you saw with that is a couple of public restrooms. We're going to knock down most of the old living quarters, a couple roll-up doors on the side of the bays that we can flex that space, outdoor concerts, food truck events, other community gatherings. We could all come together in the front between the two structures and create a very usable, friendly, interesting space, some sunshade cover, things of that nature, kind of allowing us to do that. So we're working on that. We're hoping that some of these savings that can be captured with Chief Joseph's good job with value engineering, reluctant value engineering, to buy our own equipment. So we're making some savings that was originally budgeted at a higher level by Kaufman Lynn, I think, because we didn't understand fully the fallout from the supply chain issues and potential item run-ups, cost run-ups, contractors, things of that nature, labor. So we're coming in better, as Chief had indicated. So we're hoping to catapult some of those savings into the renovation or demolition of that space. Now, we can't get to it until we go live, because we're still going to have 2 fire departments that we're starting now, kind of covering those costs after January. When we start bringing on more staff, then we start having that cost. So those things are in play. The second question,
The facade.
the facade, so the,
During This time that, because it would appear that it would be probably early 2025 before we.
Sure,
get
sure.
the
So,
rear.
actually, the work, I talked with Kaufman Lynn quickly, with their team. They will give us, once we get some draft plans from the architect, they'll give us a cost. And to them, demoing the old space, converting it as we've shown, isn't much of a project. From, from what they're used to doing, schools, fire stations,
Right.
a quick demo, paving, couple bathrooms off the old structure. It's not gonna be that much. Now, the facades, when we designed the new station, has a very similar feel and look as the existing complex Spanish tile roof, the beige stucco. It's the same basic look. So there shouldn't be dramatic facade differences. I have Pat queued up that when we're done with this construction, the rest of the buildings will get repainted. So everything will have fresh paint, a fresh set of look to the whole, all of our buildings will have fresh paint. So it all matches the same color. It'll really clean up and look really well for us. So those things are queuing. I'm guessing we'll give Sam a kick in the backside, get him moving along, but he had started on some of those architectural stuff with Joby, kind of rolling that out. So I'm hoping in the next meeting or two, we should have a little bit more refined, so that way you can start, I don't want to say touching and feeling, but having a more fingerprints of yours on it, maybe some different lights. What does the Veterans Memorial look like on that wall that's there? Is that adequate restroom space, having 3, restrooms, single serve restrooms? Is that enough? So, it's pretty simple. There isn't a lot to it, but there is a plan. And again, the facade should match relatively similar. And then landscaping. I know it's right now you see, gravel and unpainted cinder block. Eventually all that starts to come to life. The windows, the structure starts to have a little life, right? Once you put a door on something, a little bit of life. The caulk, the stucco goes up, it starts to have a softer feel and look to the structure. And it'll start, you'll see our fire station that, and as Chief said, is we're having great success getting good quality candidates that'll be here. Chief's leadership, we will succeed. There is no sacrifice in service for our residents. This is just me leading to what I want to say regarding a few other things, but yes.
Just another update is the December 6th topping off. By the time you get, we're cleaning up the site right now in preparation for that. So you'll be able to walk through the building and go upstairs and check it out. Hopefully we'll have most of the drywall in, so you'll have a good look and feel of how the whole layout's gonna sit. But that's gonna be a good day, the topping off party.
Good, thank you.
For everybody.
And at the 7th, the next day is the Mingle Jingle at St. Lucie Church, for which we will have our freshly painted and new rescue.
Yes,
We'll have a little touch a truck event for the residents and the kids that are there. So you can, Chief Joseph and his team will be there to show you our new rescue. And what we're moving to is, instead of the super size ambulance, we're going back to a more custom, manageable. Have air shocks or
the cloud ride, I think it's
cloud. He really wanted the cloud ride. So residents, when you are taken to the hospital, it will be a first class ride on your way. So
that was a
understand
priority.
Yep. Right.
Marshall, I have a request. When we paint all the buildings, can we do it white instead of beige? Based on the fact that everybody is turning to white. So if we're beige, we start to look old.
We go to that Boca pink, huh? No.
Oh, God, no.
So we could pick any color if you're contemplating this collectively, you want a different color sooner rather than later, because the stucco is coming up, then we're going to paint it. I'd hate to repaint the fire station and then follow through. So if you want a white, we could lead with the fire station to a different color look or paint color, and then we can follow behind with the other buildings when it's done.
When you drive down A1A or up A1A, the buildings that are still beige look old compared to the ones that are white. It just ages them. And since this is going to be fresh and new, I'd rather that we look fresh and new.
So if
Can you
you
provide
would, if you could give me
samples?
some.
Can you provide some samples for us to maybe choose?
Yeah,
from?
anybody that's having their building redone, you probably have a color So if you want to provide that, I'll have Pat get some samples and we can take a quick look. It's not going to cost us more. It's a quick change order because I don't believe they've ordered the paint yet, but it's coming quick. Yeah, like one stucco's going up here in the next couple, 3 weeks. This week stucco. So paint's right after stucco. So it's going to be fast.
So what color is selected now? What we have? on
Same
the
color
exterior?
we have now. I can't tell you that it's
The
probably
building department, that's
Sugar Creek 8181.
Okay.
building department. Look
There
at
you
that,
go.
that's
There's your
color.
color. So if there is a real, if you know after or you think about it tonight, send me an email like you'd like to see it different. We need to really work on this fast. I'm not beholden to any colors. I've done that before in my career and people have not liked color choices I make, so I don't make color choices. So, whatever you want, just let us know, Chief and I know, and we'll get that queued up for you.
Does Sam, would he have some suggestions
Sure,
perhaps?
I'm sure we could
Maybe
get
could we
Sam
ask
to.
Sam,
Are you
what
telling
he
me you want a
recommends?
different color? Am I hearing you would like a different color? If I look at everybody,
I think white is.
Right, yeah.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, and there are probably 600 different whites.
yes.
Yeah.
so we could go with tattered sail. What do we say? No, I'm just kidding.
I guess I'd be interested in what Sam recommends, or
Yeah.
maybe Kaufman Lynn, because they might have an idea of what looks.
Chief's
really-
got some marching orders. Find us a color.
Yeah, and to be
We have to
fair,
decide very, very, very quickly.
if you give people options and you say
That's,
three
just,
and they vote on them, you could paint that building, any one of them, and they would never know once it's painted if it was the one they chose or not.
So I'm gonna rely on the
So-
architects a bit because I don't know that we have time for a public poll
Right.
on
No.
colors. We're just,
No.
if you're giving me the order to change the
Change
color,
white, right.
we will
Yeah.
change that color.
Like a couple of options,
Yes,
a little bit more modern
Right.
than
Yes,
the
that was it.
beige.
I'm gonna
We
go
have
talk to
now.
Kaufman Lynn right now.
Yeah. So as soon as he leaves, he's gonna go
Wait
talk to
to
him.
any
Because they
particular
probably have some.
white.
yeah.
Well, because there is a white border
Right.
on the building, so we gotta make sure if that could be the same color, or if that has to go to something else. But we'll take a
Right.
quick look. I will get back to you.
Okay.
Chief will, start getting that wheels turning really fast.
So the TCO, temporary,
Certificate of occupancy.
thank you very much.
Yep.
Just went on my
Yeah.
head. Is target for the second week of April. Right now, they're saying we're a little bit ahead of that, but that's my target date, the second week of April. And the CO should be around June, July, after all the,
You'll,
punch lists are all done.
you'll notice it's gonna look like it's going faster now. I mean, you see trusses for the small roof off the
Right.
side. I mean, like everything, it goes fast now versus the shell work, the foundation is not exotic, not exciting to see somebody putting that part. Now we're gonna start seeing the stucco, the windows, the roof lines, the parapets, all that stuff is gonna start. popping in.
So after this week, things are gonna really take off because the roof will be just about done. The windows, except for we're keeping the big window up front, that's gonna be the last one in because we're gonna move the elevator in and work on that. So the last window to be put in is a big window in the front, the picture window. And but everything's gonna be internal. They're running wires right now. They're running HVAC systems. And because he has like 2 or 3 crews working on different things all the time. John Ricker is amazing, but they're doing a great job. So let me get my color.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Chief.
So if I could have a little bit of a latitude, I want to build on the success that's being formed by Chief Joseph in delivering a fire department, fire rescue department that will be focused on our residents and our community. And that has always been our goal, is to find a way to enhance and improve that emergency rescue service. That's 90% of what we do. It's not fire, even though we got to be prepared for it. Most of it is the fire rescue. We will now have 2 rescue services vehicles fully staffed to the highest level that the county wants. We agreed to it on site, center of town, to rescue response immediately. So that takes me to what I would like to present to the community a bit. I've got, things on my shoulder, let them have it, be cautious. So I'll probably fall somewhere in that. And I'll start with what Teresa said. Is there something going to blow up at the meeting today? And I said, maybe me. But I will use my better judgment. But as you know, and as I've communicated to each with you privately, and I will now share with the community, as we recall, the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee in the spring ordered a operational audit, not a financial or performance, an operational audit of the city of Delray Beach as it relates to our interlocal service agreement with the city for fire rescue services, one that we'd been in for about 30 years. The audit period that they looked at was 2016 through now, so basically the current term of the contract we are under. People outside of this room made statements when that got started, but I did go back to the letters of support from the mayor and the vice mayor at that time saying anything that would lead to improved records that we had had difficulty and have had difficulty obtaining over all these years, we were in support of. So the preliminary audit came out last week on Tuesday. Within 5 minutes, the press is calling. So the city of Delray Beach kicked that out to the media to begin to have the public digest the 5 findings. The 5 findings, as I read them, don't look good for the city. And it basically sets the stage as to why we left, marked by a period of time of poor financial management and decision-making that led to a higher cost and poor service that we felt we deserved and wanted better. We never complained about the service of Delray, just the underlying structure wasn't what we wanted. We had no place at the table. We moved forward. With that being said, that's what the audit reports, the 5 basically said, marked by a period. The biggest unknown that is laid out in there that again, this doesn't have backup information. Every time I read it, I come up with 6 or 7 more questions. I speak with David, who did all the financial work on 21 and 22. He comes up with just nothing more than questions rather than resolve to some of the matters. But that those findings indicated that there's about 2 million of underreporting, underrepresented potential monies that Delray did not appropriately assess to us. 2 million more reasons why we left. But those were left there. Now, a lot of that, a majority, whatever, 85% was some type of pension issue they had where they didn't consistently use their actuarial reports to determine the appropriate contributions that were a multiplier for each personnel. So they said that to us is somewhere around 1.8 million. Now, again, this is an operational report. The Auditor General is not obligated to release their work papers as to how they came to those numbers, but those numbers were released. Those numbers would indicate they have a bigger pension issue out there, unless they had the true dumb luck of only misdoing the 22 employees that kind of bounced in and out of Highland Beach Station, which they show they didn't accurately track. So my concern is there's more questions than not here. Unfortunately, the spin has been started and placed. We were never, as the other party, it's a 2-party contract. City of Delray Beach, Highland Beach. Not once were we contacted. Not once. That's alarming to me, that to not have the other party of a contract that we've been in relationship for 30 years, we don't get contacted. And we've duly noted that we had a conflict with them, a legal issue with them over the interpretation of how costs are calculated. The Auditor General, I did not see the Auditor General is making legal interpretations. I didn't know they did that, but they've made a legal interpretation on how it should be interpreted pursuant to the way Delray. Rather than saying they used the assumption of their interpretation, they made an absolute. I don't know that that's the body to make an absolute determination on how a contract that's under conflict, or at least not contacted our legal counsel on that. Nonetheless, we are in this situation. The comment that got me today, and of course it's to get me, right? It's to get us worked up, is to say that the voters of Highland Beach were misled. I don't know that we misled them. Those 5 findings are things that we communicated to our residents as to the reasons why we were moving out. Poor management on the financial side of that house led us to saying it's time for us to explore our own opportunities. gave them an opportunity to renegotiate, try to fix some of this. That was rebuffed. We said, okay, then we're going to terminate the contract and move forward. But to say we misled this community, that's not correct. If anything, some of those findings reduced our payback period. And if we all remember, Mayor Hillman always said it was a 4.5, 5-year repayment on our investment to build the station and move forward. You add $2 million more to it based on the savings of operating, we're looking at a 4-year repayment period. So I guess I understand what their elected officials are doing, trying to control the narrative on it, but there was never a misleading. We said these things. That was the reasons why we wanted to leave. Everybody in this room knows that. Everybody, all the condo groups we went and communicated. And I remember going to Coronado, see Mr. Chinovsky here, the president of the Coronado. We sat and talked about it, that it's a mess. They can't get us the stuff we want. And we've been doing this. And David and our external auditors over all these years have been asking for actual records. Give us what you have. They did. David was able to procure those accurate records. Show that we did it two ways. We did it in rank, which we contend, and we did it their way. Both worked in our favor with data they provided for actual payroll. So the pension is a little bit surprising. They used the wrong multiplier, something of that nature. Whether they just did it for ours or across the entire pension fund employee base, by my guess, but those are things that are out there. There was never a misled. Other statements are that the quality of service is going to be poor based on our decision. It's not what I'm hearing. It's not what I believe. That's not what's going to happen here. We have the ability to provide a better service for our community. I had a long conversation. I'm going to kind of go off a little bit, a long conversation at the Managers Association on a podcast as to we are kind of going against the grain a bit because of home rule, providing the service our residents want. For me to be able to be responsive to the elected officials that are responsible to make those decisions for which we are not. The audit even said we're not even entitled to records. How are you in a conceivably, $40 to $50 million contract and we can't get basic payroll records outside of a public records request? So the auditor came in. There's a lot of more questions I have. There's a lot more information I would like to see, what supports it. Because of this and some of this stuff I'm seeing and how quickly it went to the paper and appears a little one-sided audit as I'm reading based on other people's comments. I've reached out. I'm working with Mr. Torsivia. He's going to have a letter to our response letter to JLAC, expressing some of our concerns regarding the process. I've also made contact to develop a pre-litigation strategy for you all, what we should be careful and be ready to do to defend our interests. But again, a lot of this has to do with, if we're looking at the same set of records and we don't get the same number, the problem hasn't been cured. And again, this is an operational report. It doesn't say, this isn't an enforcement order of the state body. This is saying Delray moving forward should work on these things to correct these problems. Because they said they didn't do it right. They said that they consistently do something right. So what year was good? What year was bad? There's no backup. And they're not obligated to provide the records. This is it. This 12-page draft report, that's all you get. So I don't know that adds credence. It appears the city of Delray Beach is procuring an external forensic auditing firm, just like we did, to substantiate what the auditor found to begin to get ready for their mediation. So shots across the bow. That's why I said we will be prepared to respond accordingly. And we will, unfortunately, I thought we were coming to closure with the separation. It only appears this is the last few obstacles we need to move through. But I promise you we will move through them. We will be okay. It's just, it appears it's gonna, some shots in the press, some ill feelings, things of that nature. I mean, I hope on the one quote that hopefully in time we can work back together. I think that was from one of their elected officials. I would hope so too. I don't know why we got to this place, but the spirit of cooperation down the road, I do hope that returns because we could be good strategic partners in the future. Unfortunately, we have to go through this little bit more of a messy situation going forward. But I will, again, provide reports each step of the way. Again, David and I, every day talking about it. It's interesting because we were really comfortable with our 21 and 22 data because we got direct payroll data from them, actual. And David even did it their way. And it didn't work out to whatever the auditor said. So the auditor team had conflicting language in there. So it's legal interpretations. I think, I'm not quite sure of their scope or mission on this clearly, but hopefully those questions will be answered. And if we have to go to mediation in that process, so be it. We'll be prepared. We're ready to undertake that. We knew that this would always potentially be out there in the future. We hope to avoid it. But here we are, and we'll just, we'll move through here. But again, to say that we owe something from a quick read of a document without proof, that's a little bit of a loose use of that language, but we'll be prepared. We'll move through this. Residents were never misled. These findings do not look good. Yet what I'm reading, it sounds like it was like a victory lap or something. There's my rough comment. I'm not seeing a victory lap with 5 findings like that. I know that I would be in trouble. So if I got something for you all like that. So I'll leave it there. Again, Mr. Torsivia is working on our immediate response to JLAG as he's been involved intimately since the writing of that contract. And we'll be prepared, and we'll just, we will protect our interests. We'll communicate clearly to each of you so you can collectively give us the direction you want to pursue.
And, I've seen a lot of these reports over the years, and if I was Delray Beach, I'd be embarrassed by this report. I mean, this report says that on table 3, current turnover in key management positions. So over a little over 3-year period, which is about 1,100 days, they didn't have a city manager for 712 of those days. So 70% of this 3-year period, they didn't have a city manager. Roughly half that time, they didn't have an assistant city manager, 474 days, and about a third of the time they didn't have a finance director. So to me, it's exactly what, when Marshall and I would go to meet with them, it was constant turmoil. We met with various officials. Every time we'd go, there'd be a different manager, or different finance director, someone different at the table. The report talks about their lack of institutional knowledge. So who knows what they provided, because we don't know what Delray provided to the auditing committee. But again, I'd be embarrassed if I was Delray at this. I wouldn't be trumpeting this as a victory. I would be embarrassed that the city, which frankly, at one point in time was the golden city of Palm Beach County. 10 years ago, everybody wanted to be like Delray. And unfortunately, over the last decade or so, they've had a lot of issues. We've never criticized their fire department. You all have always been very respectful and thankful for the services that the firefighters and paramedics provided. But unfortunately, they just never had their act together in terms of management. And this just shows that you just throw numbers up against the wall. I have a lot more confidence in the work that Marshall and our finance team and our outside auditors. And I still believe that when all is said and done, if we ever get to that point, maybe we never get to litigation, hopefully not. Because, one of my favorite sayings is litigation is only good for lawyers. And that's not where anybody needs to be. But if we get there, I think at the end of the day, they'll owe us money. And I've told that to Marshall before. I'm going to be very surprised if we ever get through litigation where we get to actually see all these records and you look at what our firefighters, the in-rank averages were. I still believe we've overpaid.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think the report was very biased. I was pretty surprised considering I thought the Auditor General would be a more objective review, but I find after reading the report that it was very biased. And I also see the importance of protecting our interest. So, I think the letter is appropriate and positioning ourselves so that we can protect our interests. I don't really understand how all these things go, but I find it strange that they can make these findings, but not be required to share their work papers. I find that just extremely bizarre. And, why wouldn't that have to be transparent and open
Well, you will eventually get them one of two ways. Either a public records at Delray of everything they provided, or in litigation and discovery. So eventually, the papers are going to come out. And again, if you're the committee that's reviewing this and you're only hearing from Delray Beach, well, okay, I could beat Muhammad Ali in a fight if I was the only one punching and he had his hands behind me. Then I don't think I beat him. But, if only one side is putting out information and they never contacted the town for information, then they got a one-sided story. And even with a one-sided story, Delray looks like it was, I don't say improperly managed, just wasn't managed. You don't have a manager for 70% of the time in a 3-year period. How could you say you were properly managed? So I'm looking forward to hopefully we can have our chance to either tell the auditing committee our side of the story, or at some point in the future, if we need to.
I'd like, I'd like to add that in the apparent glee that they have that there may be a pot of gold, more than they anticipated. It is, I see it as a rush to cover gross admissions in structuring this narrative of we won, kind of. It really shows this a gross misjudgment in funding their pensions, which may open significant questions and funding issues that they're going to have. But we won't even know that until there's full discovery. And like you said, there either has to be voluntary turnover of everything. And it's been, kind of clawing the information to date. But in discovery, in litigation, we'll obtain everything that we need to really do a correct analysis of what should have been and what needs to be done and what, if any, funds need to be paid.
I also wouldn't be so quick to imply that because they underbilled means that we have to overpay. The fact that they did something wrong, which is apparent from this report, no matter how you look at it, they didn't really come out and say that Highland Beach now has to pay that money. They just said, you underbilled. So there's a jump that they're making that isn't necessarily accurate. And there is a definite argument to be made that, yeah, bad on you, Delray, but that doesn't mean you can come back and fix it now.
My opinion is that we're going down the right course. What you said and Glenn Lascivia said is the right way to go. I've already gotten a couple of phone calls from people who read about this on the thing, and my answer is the same. We don't agree, and we're looking into it. That's basically, I think the course we're taking is the correct.
Yeah, I agree, Marshall. You covered everything. I agree with you. I think we had to vote today. I still vote for our fire department. I'm glad we did. And that's so much. I mean, just this report just says Delray, like you said, lacking managers and had nobody in there. And I agree with you. I think this is the best thing we did for Highland Beach.
So next steps going forward to position ourselves to, protect Highland Beach and to get resolution. What are the next specific steps?
So Glenn and I are meeting. He's got a letter he's been working on feverishly over there, so I'm excited. So he's writing. I like it when he writes because he gets really excitable. If you can tell today, right? So we'll work through what our immediate response is. I've spoken to an attorney that does this in the state of Florida for over 40 years to give us maybe a fresh set of eyes to help us strategize how we want to protect those interests, just to give us some ideas, thoughts, strategies, and then we can determine what direction. And again, some of it, I will default to Glenn's had a good view to, it's really on them to come get it. So we will just protect our position. We are also, again, David did 21-22. We've asked our external auditors based on what they've gotten today, not this stuff, to close out what they did. So we have that record of, hey, because that report said all the public records and all that public information was given to us. And we took it as in good faith that those records were clean. Those were their payroll records. So, and that's 85% of that contract's payroll. The other stuff, maybe they missed, their overhead costs on maybe fuel or IVs, Band-Aids, kind of, oversimplifying it, may have been off, but those numbers are tiny, right? Those aren't the numbers that are substantial. So, we will go through those exercises. I will, every meeting, now what's on the agenda, we'll just keep, publicly doing it. If we need to have some intimate conversations, I'm not going to put that in. I'll give you a shout. I'll give you each a call, and we'll just go through that and sit down and work our way through what we want to do. Again, I will share Glenn's letter once that's available as to telling JLAC our concerns with this and what we'd like to see, and just go there. And then I'm guessing this will go in December. I don't think it had, because again, this is draft. This is just supposed to be a draft, but it's already out. Like it's though it's absolute. I mean, it still has to come. I don't think it's going to change much, but it still has to go back to the Auditor General after Del Rey responds. Then that report is officially given to the legislators at the Joint Legislative Committee in an open session, for which I will be there to share our comments and concerns on this matter and see what transpires from there, and see what the legislators think. I know that they've had some concerns with some of the other operational reports not related to this, so I don't know what happens, where their heads are going to be at, the Senate contingent or the House contingent on that committee. I'm not sure. I'm not there day to day. Jared's keeping an eye on that stuff for us. Our lobbyist is in there, just kind of letting us know what's happening, what's being said, so we can at least be attuned to those inner workings if we can, as much as we can be. But I'll share it over time, and then big decisions will come, and that's when you guys may tell me what you want.
Sure. You want public comment? Come on, come on. Yeah, you need to come to the podium.
In sitting with my peers after reading the article, my other volunteer presidents, that's people who don't get paid. Okay, our comment was 3 words, Marshall, and we support it: disruption, fear, and greed. And that's what we understood in the article. They were disrupting the status quo. It was fear in what just took place, in greed of the dollars that were lost. And the common bond amongst the 7 people I was sitting with felt that over the next year and a half, 18 months to 2 years, it's going to be proven that what was written is going to be just untrue. You have a lot of support by a lot of the people in our 3.5 mile barrier reef. So I think you were right on. And it's going to be interesting to watch. It's interesting right now that it seems the political atmosphere, if you say it enough times, people will believe it. Yes. That's how we felt about the article.
Yeah, we all definitely support you. Absolutely. We are all behind you, and we will continue to be behind you. We all feel what Highland Beach has done so far. Establishing the fire rescue is absolutely the right thing to do. So we completely support you.
And it will be a success.
Yeah, it will.
It will be a success.
Yeah.
It will be.
Yeah, we're very proud of what has been accomplished so far and what will be accomplished. So. Excellent. Okay, moving forward, Florida Department of Transportation project update.
Yeah, so I haven't got anything, but there might be, this is Teresa for Boca portion. So we will get this out to the folks just that might be impacted. FDOT put out their project meeting. Remember our first set of meetings, this is for the Boca one is going out, which is the project adjacent to the south. It does move into the Grand Court, so it does. So I think the project cutoff is Grand Court. For Grand Court to Linton is our project, if you will. Grand Court through Boca is the Boca project. So 2 years, 3 years of construction. Congratulations. But so
thank you so much.
yeah. So I will share this with everybody. We just got this from them, but we're still waiting. Again, they're going out to bid here in December. Once they get a contractor, means and methods is their first step. So we'll know when, how long, phasing, all that stuff will become available. And I'm guessing it'll be around the same time as the Milani meeting. So that'd be an exciting season here with a lot of project meetings to get the public out. So that's forthcoming, but I will forward this out to the public. and for you all to know, but this is for the adjacent. So if you get this by chance looking somewhere else, this is the Boca project. So just look at the details to that.
What that tells me, based on what you've just said, since I do know they're not planning to start that until after our project is finished, is that I won't have an issue because I can go out towards Spanish River, and then when I have to go the other way, Highland Beach will be finished.
Yeah, and this is a fall of 2027 construction start. So when ours finishes in 25, let's say 25, right? Everybody nod, 25. That's good omen that we'll get done in 25. This will be, shortly thereafter.
Okay, next item, Building Department Recertification Program Update.
Mr. Remus is out of the country, but everything is still moving forward, same type of progress. The change and adoption of that second read did clarify us to make sure our ordinance is consistent with state law and the milestones, those kind of timing. But the buildings are coming in, it's starting to pick up pace, and everyone is getting all of those things completed for us. So that's it's working well. So thank you for your support.
Great. Continued discussion of Milani Park.
Woo, boy. Sweating up here. Milani Park. So with that, as we know, February 1st is the public meeting. The community come out. Coastal Star did post an ad of our conversation. So I think the public is starting to understand that the county has expressed in July of this year that they are moving forward. I'm making calls to first and foremost to get us an archaeologist, because that's the first part of their steps, is to evaluate that to ensure those consistencies. And then also to see if we can, again, find an advisor consultant. Those calls are being made to help us put that strategy together as to, how do we address the county as they move forward, and to work to convince them that these dollars could be better utilized to address more pressing socioeconomic needs of this county that we always hear about: housing, insurance, food insecurity, the unhoused. If you sell a property, paid $4 million, you could sell it, say 20, 30 million. Boy, that's a lot of dollars to address some other programs that are probably underfunded or missed. So we're going to try to make those arguments. Where we go, I don't know, but Len Rubin and I have been talking. I know the mayor got the email. I'll share my response to everybody when I get it. How Senate Bill 108, right? The live local. If this was, we got an email that if this property was to fall into a developer's hands, they can build these high-rise towers. No, that's not how the experts and I are reading it, because they talk about currently allowed. Currently allowed is what is the maximum height in any existing zoning district. The highest in any zoning district in Highland Beach is 50 feet or the 3-story. So 50 feet from finished floor. So if it did go over to a developer, 50 feet is that height. Max density is 12 units an acre, regardless of in any zoning district. So those are the real limitations that they're, and things that have been settled through settlement agreements or other type of incentivized developments 20, 30 years ago doesn't consider currently allowed. It's basically your zoning. What scares the bigger cities with this is that have, high rise, commercial, industrial type zoning districts, and that anything is in play. That's just not the case here. And again, I still don't think the property at its true value is apt for a 40% allotment for affordable housing. I just don't know how you do that math, especially if you're capped at 50 feet. That's really difficult on a 2.5 acre to 5 acre. How you crack that nut on the development it looks at. So don't be concerned about those veiled, I don't say they're veiled threats or misinterpretations, if you will, that you're going to get a 30-story tower built on that property. That just isn't how the law is currently written. And it does have some requirements they have to meet to even get those incentivized or any district density kind of thing. So But we're still working on that. Again, trying to find an architect. Couple of the folks that worked on it originally aren't with us anymore. So, I've reached out to the state, I've reached out to the Seminole Tribe archaeological team, just trying to, who could help us review the work of the county, just to make sure that they truly are following the protocols that they have. The state does recognize it having significant elements and materials, and it is qualified for assignment. Unfortunately, I'm not your archaeologist. We're going to need some help sorting through what that exactly means. But we're working on that, and then also trying to find, who might be able to help us come up with a final strategy on how to address this.
And then looking for a law firm. Someone specializing in this area, practicing in this area.
Yes, I don't want to get right to that. I think there's some political strategy and lobbying type work that has to be explored simultaneously. Again, if they were to build everything, if they just follow it to the T, our standing is quite limited. So we got to just figure out where we want to go and get a team to help us get there. And trust me, we'll hear from everybody soon. I've got a big piece in, like I said, I was going to start in the manager's minute along with this every meeting, kind of giving the history of Milani Park. How did it start in 1987 when it was to be a development, then sold, and then, they didn't move forward and give it to the county and litigation. And so we're kind of telling the story of how we got here. So everyone truly understands that it's just, we can't just say no. There's some complications in this process and settlement agreements. And we built out a web page for folks to be able to get those documents so they can see those public records and can feel comfortable with what's happened. So again, this is a progressive process. I'm still in the belief to, the community has to champion their spirited reaction. And then we have to have a more structured administrative response and that too. So there's two parts,
So we've had several people comment about the environmental issues. We have it today, we had people submit emails. Do you see that? So you said you're going to get an archaeologist. Do you see the environmental aspect being part of, asking the specialist, or do you see it as a whole separate professional that we would engage?
It might be a different specialist, but I think it's all in play. What Joanne told us today, I think, is kind of eye-opening, that it is the hottest spot for turtle crawls, active turtle nesting areas. That should be important to the county. It should be important to all of us collectively, especially when there's endangered species nesting. I don't know, it seems important to me. I don't know what I'm missing, but those things all have to be communicated. I don't want to respond for them. I know what I would say if I was them. So we got to come up with making those coherent arguments. I think also the quality of that rock outcropping for an active beach really isn't suited well. I don't know that jumps off of them, that the danger is there. And I've been talking with Chief Joseph that I got to have the fallback plan, right? So if this doesn't work, that's us responding. How do we get there to help people? And how often are we going to be responding? How do we get to the beach to help folks? So we got to build that in the backside of it too, because they're not going to respond. So just got to figure that out.
Do we know why the original development idea never went forward?
The original development?
Yeah, why Mrs. Milani and her husband never actually developed the property?
I think just to give a little bit of history, it started with, she wanted like 160 some odd units on that parcel. The town said no, then it settled somewhere around 60, then it didn't happen. And I think Mr. Milani had passed at that period of time. Ms. Milani, because the family and her husband loved this place like everyone else does. She felt the best use was to name a park for her husband on this property. It was sold, it sat for a while, the county stirred it up, and then we said no. So then it got into some lawsuits and litigations. It kind of settled around 2000, then peaked back again for clarity to come up with a formal settlement agreement. So it's kind of taken a life of its own, and then it just kind of sat. And now we're to that point where they want to execute it. So now we have to decide you know, within the boundaries that are presented to us, how do we navigate that maze a bit?
Okay, thank you for the update. Moving on to new business. Item A, approve and authorize the town manager to execute a construction services agreement with Baxter and Woodman Incorporated in the amount of $89,935.22 for lift station number 3 rehabilitation projects.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mayor,
Good afternoon.
any questions?
Well, so Pat's not gonna say anything.
It's
So
pretty
basically,
basic, simple
Yeah.
for it. Any questions?
it's for
Um,
construction engineering.
Here for
It is the
lift station for-
appropriation
Yes,
request
we have
supported
to do
project.
this. It's the
Yeah.
appropriation. We have to spend the money for
Yeah.
it.
Correct.
I mean, it seems like you've followed all the protocols as far as getting the best deal.
Yeah, actually, they wanted a little bit more and I beat them down. They wanted 139,000. I beat them down to
Oh,
this price.
Good job.
Thank
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you. Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
Thank-
So you negotiated an even better price.
Yep.
I don't know. Do we need any discussion on this?
It's-
Okay, maybe we have a motion.
I move that we approve and authorize the town manager to execute a construction services agreement with Baxter and Woodward, Inc. in the amount of $89,935.22 for lift station number 3 rehabilitation.
Seconded.
We'll do a roll call.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern.
Yes,
And Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item, approve and authorize town staff to purchase an annual supply of sulfuric acid, sodium hydroxide, and corrosion inhibitor chemicals from multiple vendors in an amount of $173,008.40 for the town's water treatment plant operations.
pretty basic. Every year we have to buy chemicals for the year and just the prices obviously have went up. So now we're coming before the commissioners since it's over 50,000 for each of these chemicals, just asking for the blessing.
pretty detailed, coming up to 40 cents.
Huh?
So,
Every penny counts, I guess, nowadays.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking at the different chemicals
Uh-huh.
and one of them lowers the pH
Uh-huh.
and then another one increases
It
the
almost,
pH.
it's in different parts of the treatment is what it is. We
Okay,
lower the
because-
pH to get a different to get the NH2 out of the water. And then we raise it to get the cow flow back in to make soft water. So there's a method to the madness.
And this is all piggybacking on other contracts?
Piggybacking on larger contracts, they get the better deal, of course, because they're buying 50 loads,
Sure.
we're buying 12.
Yeah, I mean, we're a small
Right.
community, so we don't have
Correct.
that buying power unless we
Right.
piggyback with somebody else.
Exactly.
Makes sense to me.
yeah, makes sense to me too. Any additional discussion? No, okay, if not, motion please.
I move that we approve and authorize town staff to purchase an annual supply of sulfuric acid, sodium hydroxide, and corrosion inhibitor chemicals from multiple vendors in an amount of $173,008.40 for the town water treatment plant operation.
Seconded.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes,
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very
Commissioner.
much.
Thank you.
Moving on to town commission comments, Commissioner Goldberg. Any comments?
Oh, no, except to thank everyone that spoke today. Jason is here. Thank you very much for your input. A lot of information was given to us about the marine accessories. And I'm looking forward to getting more information and perhaps going out again, which I think is also very valuable after having all this new information. And the maps are very revealing. That was supporting documents today. So I thank you very much, and I'll be attending next week the League, Florida League of Cities, and I look forward to reporting back after that attendance. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank also Ingrid, Eric, and Jason for all their hard work on this. And I'd just like to repeat our proclamation again. Thank all the veterans that served and ultimate, the ones that gave their lives. And thank you, and don't be afraid to thank a veteran.
I agree with everything that so far has been said. I also want to add that my heart goes out to all the people who have lost loved ones and who have been injured because of the conflict in the Middle East. I find that it's just unbearably sad.
I, of course, agree with all the previous comments. In addition, just want to mention to the commission that there is going to be a meeting of the presidents again this Thursday. And at that meeting, police chief, the fire chief, fire marshal, and Jason are going to make presentations at that meeting. Just want to let the commission know, I believe there are about 20 condominiums involved in that. So it's a good thing. It's a exchange of information and good presentation. And it's extremely positive.
Great, excellent. Yeah, I just wanted to add, State Representative Peggy Gossett-Seidman is a co-sponsor with Representative Catherine Waldron and Senator Lori Berman on House Bill 125. Which is being heard, I guess, in the Florida Senate today. I don't know.
It passed before we walked in 108-0.
Oh,
So
that's
everyone
wonderful.
is fully supportive of her.
And
bill.
for those of you who don't know what this is, it's a resolution in the support of the state of Israel against the atrocities of Hamas. So consistent with what Commissioner David said. So thank you to Peggy and everyone else for your
Thank you.
efforts in that. That's all I had. So town attorney, anything? Nothing else? Town manager.
Mingle Jingle. It's back on Mingle Jingle St. Lucie, December 7th, 5:30. I'm getting the nod. So again, thank you to Father Horgan for volunteering the space and again, continuing this effort to bring our community together. Again, started with the prayer vigil about a month ago. So, continuing that great effort moving forward. And lastly, just to let the public know, I'm excited to announce my friend Eric Marmer has been selected as the next town manager for Manalapan. So we'll have a renewed partner on the Barrier Island moving forward. So kudos to him. Thank you for your time and service. And you earned it. So congratulations. And it'd be nice we'll have somebody on the bookend here on the Barrier Island. So it'd be good. That's all I have. Thank you.
Do we have a time for the December 6th? We have the
December
event.
6th is the top off. Thank you.
Mhm.
Top off is noon. We will re-clarify that as we speak, as I speak slowly. And 12:30 is the time
Okay.
for that event. And again, thank you for your support, the community's continued support. Again, the efforts we are making to create our own fire rescue department will be amazing and successful and provide unparalleled service focused on us, on our community and our residents. So it's gonna be great. And I can't wait to show you the new vehicle. It's beautiful, special air ride system. It's great. So.
Great. And with that, we adjourn at 3:48. Thank you, everyone.
You.
Should have said it.